d'éviter ce que certains considèrent une ingérence non tolérable dans les affaires intérieures de certains pays. C'est tout le débat et c'est à cela que nous allons nous employer aujourd'hui et j'espère que nous le ferons avec succès.
Discussion in this House on the question if the multilateral trade system can contribute to the application of the social clause. Forced labour is, as we have heard this morning various times, prohibited under Convention number 29 of the International Labour Organization. Amnesty International regularly presents some of its current concerns to the ILO Conference Committee on Application of Standards, of which Mr. Hansen has spoken to you this morning. In doing so, Amnesty hopes to contribute to the strengthening of the international standards laid down in the ILO system and the reinforcement, very important, of its supervisory mechanisms. However, as we also heard this morning, the effectiveness of the ILO system is limited because it can only expose governments which do not honor their obligations under this system to public criticism. Nevertheless, it is important that governments adhere to the most important ILO conventions so as to strengthen respect for and the implementation of international labour standards. Let me now briefly turn to the issue of forced labour and give you some idea of the main characteristics of this type of labour. Forced labour occurs in a number of countries in the world. I'll give you some country examples, not so much to single out these countries, but to give you a better idea of what is at stake. Forced labour ranges from debt bondage to forced prostitution of women and girls in Brazil, from forcible conscription of porters to detention in army work camps in Burma, and from labour reform camps to prison factories in China. I shall now briefly outline these various forms, of what often amounts to severe forms of cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment, or also torture. In Brazil, forced labour has various characteristics. In certain branches of economic activity, such as forest clearance, charcoal production, mining, labourers are held in debt, incurred through transport to work sites, food, debt against which wages are held. This situation leads often to a practice of forced imprisonment, accompanied by physical coercion. In the states of Pará and Mato Grosso, rural workers have been hired from other states and are lodged, fed, and forced to work in very, very poor conditions. They have to pay off their debts caused by prices charged for their food, for the medicines, for clothing, even for the working implements. These are clear conditions of debt enslavement and servitude. They are heightened, these conditions, by the use of hired gunmen threatening the workers with death if they dare to seek payment for the labor or try to leave the workplace. And this form of enslavement can not only be observed in the forest industry, the Amazonas, it is also in the mining industry, the charcoal production, sugar and orange plantation. A major issue here at stake is the lack of political will to investigate such situations and to prosecute those responsible for this type of human rights violations. The administration of justice fails at all levels to uphold its independence and impartiality. Impunity reigns here everywhere. Landlords, gunmen, company responsibles are hardly ever brought to justice, let alone victims and their family members being compensated. Still in Brazil, but also in Thailand, women and girls are forced to work in brothels, in mining encampments, construction projects, army barracks, etc. Women have to pay off transport and other debts incurred, including costs for medicines, and their clients pay for their sexual services directly to the brothel owners. Women and girls are thus held in virtual slavery and detention, and are often, very often being beaten, harassed, also by local police. In Burma, hundreds of thousands of villagers in minority areas have been forcibly conscripted or seized by the military to work as porters or as unpaid laborers, building roads, army camps, working on commercial projects such as corn cultivation, bamboo cutting. Porters and laborers are frequently detained at their workplace or at army camps, severely neglected, killed. Many have died from exhaustion, neglect. Others have been beaten to death. Still others have been extrajudicially executed for disobeying orders or for trying to escape. We have documented gross violations of the human rights of conscripted porters in very many minority areas in Burma. Criminal prisoners have been transported long distances, forced to work as porters for an honor project for the military. As the army has grown and its area of operation extended, its demand for porters has increased. Those now seized come from almost any area of the country. Men and women of all ages, including school children and even pregnant women, have been forcibly conscripted as porters. They have been kept in army custody for months. Some have been taken as many as 20 times in a year. They are made to transport ammunition, to carry supplies, and to frontline during battles, forced to clear mines. And you know what that means? They also kill them by the same mines. They are forced to work in construction, roads, etc. I'll be very brief on China because my colleague Haribu here has survived the prison camps in China for years and will give you a longer expose of the situation in the labor reform camps, the re-education camps through labor. Let me just say that Chinese authorities try to portray their vast labor reform system as a method for turning criminals into model citizens through industrial production. The conditions in these camps are, however, very appalling. Many political dissidents, trade unionists, religious activists, and academics suffer in this gulag. One final brief remark about the export of prison-made goods from China. Re-education through labor is an administratively imposed sentence, and the detainee is never brought before a judicial authority, nor is he permitted access to legal counsel in China. Those end up in labor reform camps. And these camps produce and export numerous prison-made goods. These products range from cosmetics, sophisticated electronic equipment, and from automobiles, poultry for consumption. Many labor reform camp enterprises are actively seeking foreign buyers. They produce items which are manufactured in appalling conditions. The workers have never received any judicial hearing. They don't know for what reason they are in these camps, and they're being tortured, harassed, live in substandard conditions, and they produce these goods. In the past, the Chinese authorities have drawn up guidelines for public security of bureaus of the various provinces and regions as to how to deal with visits of foreign businessmen to labor reform enterprises. These guidelines clearly state what visitors are to be shown, the routes along which they may travel, and the responses which have to be given to questions of businessmen. Let me finish by saying that the question of prison-made goods should be, that if these goods should be banned from the community importing regime, that is a very difficult question falling outside my brief. But what I can say here, finally, is that there is a clear need for the establishment of control and monitoring mechanisms with respect to the community's trading partners' human rights, including respect for fundamental rights of prisoners and laborers. All union member states are parties to the ILO Convention number 29 on forced labor. They should energetically promote standards as set by this and other conventions worldwide. and they scrutinize their own import regimes in the light of these international standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yuan. I have to remember you that at 1:30 there is no translation anymore. And if we want to have a discussion, the introductory speeches should be brief. Otherwise, we give the impression that we then make the discussion impossible, which is not a very comfortable feeling. Je donne la parole à M. Harry Hongaou, directeur de la Fondation Laogai pour la recherche. 10 minutes, puisqu'alors nous devons écouter M. Bishop, le secrétaire général du comité textile et habillement. Mr. Wu, please, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me to testify today on the question of forced labor in China. As most everyone in the world knows, the People's Republic of China has become a major exporting country. What everyone does not know is that the Laogai, the Chinese vast network of forced labor camps, is an important part of Chinese economy. Europeans can remember the forced labor camps which filled Nazi-occupied Europe. Fresh in their minds is the Soviet law and its camps. But little is known on this continent about the Laogai. In order to uphold its role and to suppress its people, every dictatorship must be accompanied by a prison system. Whether it be a concentration camp in which the death of the prisoners is the ultimate goal, or a labor camp in which the prisoners' work is exploited for economic gain. The Chinese Communist labor reform camps, the Laogai, have been in existence for more than 40 years. The reason why the forced labor camps are so little known are numerous and complex. The cultural and political differences between East and West. The West's concern for the statutory interest. The successful long-term political propaganda and security by the Chinese Communist Party. And today, because so much money is being made trading with China. Stalin experts in 1950s helped their comrades, Chinese comrades, establish the new gulag. But it did not take long for the Chinese to surpass their teaching and created an economic machine which also able to serve the cause of political repression. Since 1949, more than 50 million men, women, and children have been thrown into the Chinese forced labor camps. Many untold numbers have perished. I, myself, spent 19 years in 12 different labor camps, having been labeled as a counter-revolution rightist for having spoken critically of the Soviet invasion of Cuba. Let me quote the Chinese government document to explain the purpose of the law. Regulation, quote, regulation regarding labor reform, reforms for labor, issued in 1954, 40 years ago. Chapter 1, General Principles. Article 1, the regulations is adopted specially in order to punish all counter-revolutionaries and other criminal offenders, and to compel them to reform themselves, so labor, and become a new person. Article 2. Organs of reform for labor of the People's Republic of China are instruments of the People's Democratic Dictatorship and are organs from enforcement of punishment and reform of all counter-revolutionary or other criminal offenders. In China, over the gates of many camps is the slogan, "Labor makes a new law," which reminds one of the Nazi camp slogans, "Labor makes freedom." The Laogai basically 5 types of prisoners and facilities. Reform for labor convicts, re-education for labor prisoners, detention center detainees, juveniles in special facilities, and forced job placement scenarios. It means the prisoners will have finished their sentence, but not fully reformed. All of them are forced to labor. Today, China has the biggest enterprises of forced labor in our 20th century. All Laogai camps have 2 different names. One is Internal Ministry of Justice, and the other one is an external border. The Beijing government often refers to them as special state-run enterprises. For instance, Shanghai No. 7 Laogai Detachment is also known as the Shanghai Local Steel Pipe Works, and Shanghai No. 2 Laogai Detachment is known as Shanghai Biomolding Farm. The Laogai has never had a serious budget problem in China. The camp system is a profit center. Let me quote from a Chinese document issued by 1992, telling the story. Quote, "In the last 10 years, labor reform production has achieved new development. Labor reform facilities over the country enjoy fixed assistance, which a net worth of over 5,000 million RMB and 1,200 million RMB of circulating funds. In 1989, the total worth of the labor reform industrial and agricultural production was 5,590 million RMB and 319 million RMB of taxes was paid to the state, which is a solid material basis for punishing and reforming companies. Labor reform has provided the state with various products which contribute to the flourishment to the market economy. Labor reform industrial and agricultural embrace dozens of production departments: coal mining, machinery, electronic engineering, building materials, chemical industrial, textile industrial, light industrial, agricultural, farming, animal byproducts, fisheries, food processing, and so on. Industry spanning over 200 trades and turning out over 5,000 products. 24 labor reform enterprises have been granted national second-class enterprises status. Over 300 have been awarded national gold and silver medals. and 140 enterprises are authorized to export over 60 kinds of products to selling in more than 70 countries and regions. The Laogai Research Foundation published a handbook which contains a list of 1,000 names. It's a little railroad, communist Chinese, communist. There's a special selection of 40 industrial enterprises in the book. There are just a few samples. I'll just put it. For example, in the page, you will notice that Europe, even individual European countries, are frequently mentioned. This information comes from Chinese documents, some of which are public advertisements for the so-called enterprises, and other information comes from the internal limited circulation government documents. Let there be no mistake. European companies are buying Laogai products and selling them through the containers. Also, European companies are selling advanced machinery to the Laogai, which allows them to improve export quality for their clients. The Chinese claim there are only 1 million prisoners in the Laogai, and that 3,200 of them are political prisoners. This, of course, if one accepts the political prisoner figure, it will mean many one political prisoner held Laogai camp. No one knows the true figure, but I suspect there are around 10 million common and political prisoners in the Chinese Laogai today. The Laogai fundamentally violates their basic human rights. Every country has the responsibility to see the Laogai products do not cross their borders in trade. The European Parliament should take action to outlaw trade in these immoral goods. To do otherwise will be to become involved in basic violation of human rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your understanding of our pressure on time. I have now the pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Itcher, Secretary General of the Textile and Clothing Committee of